Yeah, it goes over the page into 16, but we may feel that we want to carry on with the notes that Bob has, Bob gave us, and that would be moving on to the book of Job. Has anybody any ideas about what we want to be doing or what we need to be doing? According to the notes, we're moving into the book of Job. Is that what we want to do?
No complaints.
I think that it's to carry on with Bob's teaching. It's about just to get back to the previous notes. It's all about whether it's pruning or cutting. That the true vine and the branches being pruned, or the dead branches being cut off, and so on. The the moving into Job, I'll just read out to you what I've got here. Now let's start studying Job, which primarily will be chapters 1 and 2. As you will remember, that approach is similar to our approaching to studying the kingdom of heaven, which we started in Revelations chapter 1, 2, and 3. Note that A, Job did not bring his problems upon himself because of some disobedience or character flaw, but he did benefit from abiding in his many and difficult trials. Job was not cut off, but was pruned. That's the kind of start to what we'll be exploring in the next chapters of Job. Are we happy to move into the book of Job? Not an easy book. I've always found it a difficult read, the book of Job. But yeah, there's lots of notes here about it.
Yeah, when I read Job, I usually read one chapter of the Old Testament at night, and when I get to Job, I try to read 2 or 3 to get through it faster.
I appreciate your honesty, Mickey. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of Job which I find really the sort of advice he gets from his friends causes me problems. It makes my toes curl sometimes, but yeah. But yeah, it's a tough book. But yeah, let's have a look at it then. All right. So I'll just read out first few verses. In the land of Uz, there was a man whose name was Job. This man was blameless and upright. He feared God and shunned evil. He had 7 sons and 3 daughters. He owned 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, 500 donkeys, a large number of servants. He was the greatest man among all the people of the East. That is quite a start to any book. Rarely will we hear of somebody who's blameless. And he was quite a guy. Any thoughts just on what I've read so far? He had a big family, he had lots of wealth, and he was blameless.
It says in I just got through this part in Ezekiel. It says even if Noah and Daniel and Job were there, he would still judge that city. So he's given Job as an example of, like, he's picking three people out of all the people in the Bible: Noah, Daniel, and Job. That's how righteous he was.
Yeah, yeah. There was no one like him. So he does. He's unique. He's also, I can't lay my hands on exactly where it was, but he's also mentioned as being related to Jacob, the son of Issachar, I think, which was one of Jacob's sons. And it would appear that he went down to Egypt with Jacob when there was a famine in the land, and Joseph had already gone and prepared the way for them. He would have been in that grouping. Now, whether I would imagine this is before they went down to Egypt. But as far as I remember, he's a son of Issachar. Does that help in the context? Has anybody else heard of that?
Yeah, I heard about it. I looked it up, and I'm not convinced.
Okay, good.
What's that about? A little while ago, I looked it up, and I wasn't sure that it was the same. I've never seen it anywhere else other than what Bob said, but I'm not sure.
Okay, I'll see if I can find it.
But I can't remember why I wasn't sure.
Yeah, it certainly is. From I too got it from some of Bob's notes somewhere, and no, it's not coming up on my not coming up in my search particularly. Anyway, you can leave it there. It is, I think, I'll see if I can find it for next week. But yes, it's the first time I've heard it before. When Bob, when I read some of what Bob had to say. Anyway, he was undoubtedly a remarkable man. And it just says here he was the greatest man among all the people of the East. So yeah. The next few verses just give an idea of how devoted and how careful he was when he was dealing with God. The verse 4 says his sons used to hold feasts in their homes on their birthdays, and they would invite the three sisters to eat and drink with them. And after the feasting was over, Job would make arrangements for them to be purified. And he would get up early in the morning and sacrifice for each one of them, just in case they had sinned. And perhaps, this sounds pretty bad, but then perhaps they'd cursed God in their hearts. And this was Job's regular custom. So he was a very sincere man. and he took his relationship with God very seriously, and was devoted to making sure everything was just right. Do we think? I think the answer is obvious to this question, but some cynical people might say, as Satan did later on, that he was doing this because he was trying to get on God's good side. I personally get no impression that that was the case. He wanted to. His relationship with God was such that he wanted to maintain it as perfectly as he could, and that was his main reason for living. He wasn't. He had a lot of blessing, but the blessing was not his focus. His focus was God.
I think what you're saying is right, Alan, and I think we've got to be very cautious about thrusting our motives onto Job's and saying that Job had the same motives.
Yeah.
And it's that, like you, as you read through what Job, you get this as a heart response to God, not sort of trying to bribe or manipulate God or change him.
Yes.
If I start thinking, yeah, maybe he was manipulating, then I've got three fingers pointing back at myself. And that might be my motive, but it's not necessarily Job's motive. And ultimately, we don't know. But I agree with you. I think he was sincere in what he was doing, and he wasn't trying to manipulate.
I think that's absolutely right. It was just to make sure that we covered that possibility and dismissed it, because Job is not that sort of guy. He just seems to he loves the Lord and doesn't want anything to interfere with that relationship which he has with God. And there are still very few people who are so devoted to the Lord like that. But certainly Job was a one-off in this time, the greatest man among all the people of the East. I'm sure there would be other people that had more wealth than him, but not any sort of relationship with God as Job had.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of it that way. Yeah, that's right. Spiritual wealth. He had more spiritual wealth.
Yeah, there would be kings or great landowners of various other places that would be perhaps more powerful than Job or have more wealth, but they usually ruled by fear. They didn't have any qualms about having any relationship with God, and they were probably pagan as well, so they wouldn't be worth mentioning here. Anyway, that's the scene set for Job, who was, for all intents and purposes, perfect in many people's eyes. And then God seems to hold counsel. I can't really get my head around this, but he he interviews Satan and says, "Where have you come from? What have you been doing? What have you been up to?" And he says, "I've been going here and there on the earth." What's our impression of God's counsel, if you like? If you just excuse me, I need to just go away for a minute or two. We'll be back in a second.
So this council, mine reads the sons of God. Who is that?
The sons of God, those are the angels.
That would make sense, and that Satan was among them.
Yeah. Sons of God, it means directly made from God. Like Adam, he was a son of God, made from the dirt of the earth. He didn't have earthly parents. Jesus is son of God and son of man, right? He always existed, but his body was formed by the Holy Spirit in Mary's womb rather than coming from a man and a woman. So that's why he's called the Son of God. And then we're sons of God by faith, adopted into with the faith of Abraham, adopted into the family of God. And
So,
angels,
Mickey, what you're saying that if you're not a Christian, you're not a son of God.
Well, there's a few places, like maybe two in the whole Bible, that says children, that we're all children of God in a general sense. But everywhere else, when it says son of God, it has to be one of those conditions. It has to be by faith as a Christian, or Adam, or Jesus, or the angels are sons of God. That's my understanding anyway. I don't know if there's something else to say on it.
You're probably right, actually, as I think about it.
It says in John, first chapter of John, that he gave them power to become the sons of God. Those who believe on Jesus' name.
Because it comes up again in Genesis chapter 6 about the sons of God taking a woman that they desired and having children with them, marrying her.
Yeah, and then people say that's the lineage. Some people believe it that way, and some believe it's angels. So, and then in Hosea, it has a place where some would say that's talking of. But I think in that case, in Hosea, it's talking about the future when they will become sons of God, the Jewish people. In Hosea, here, so yeah, some people. That's the only. If this means lineage of the line of those that are following God, then that would be the only place in the Bible that has it that way. If it's Genesis 6, but it could be. I hear it both ways on that one.
I think the if you look at the genealogy in Matthew and Luke, they take back, son of so and so, so and so and so and so, through the generations, and it gets down to the near Adam, and he says, son of Adam, and Adam, son of God. We are all created by God, and in that sense, we are his creatures. But yeah, that the only true Son of God is Jesus.
Yeah, Adam. It says that of Adam because he was made by God from the earth, from the materials of the earth.
Yeah.
He didn't have earthly parents.
Yeah. So because of all that lineage, if you like, all the people of the earth have been created by God. So it doesn't make them spiritual sons of God. It doesn't make them actual sons of God, but they are created by God.
Yeah,
So,
there's a place, one of the Psalms says we are all children of God. And then Paul, maybe when he's talking in Athens, it says maybe the other place where it says we are all children of God. But I think everywhere else yeah, it's not anything to argue about, though.
No. We're sons of God in that we are creatures made by God, but we also live in a fallen world, and we have our relationship with God is broken. It's only restored by the Son of God, Jesus, and belief in him, faith in him, causes us to be restored. I think you're right. It's when Paul was talking to one of the pagan people. It's about all the gods that they had. I think it mentions there that something along the lines of we are all his sons or something like that. But it's in a different sense. It's not in the sense of that everybody is saved, if you like, because they're all sons of God and daughters too, Linda. That's not. It's not from that point of view. What it may imply is that there is a spiritual aspect to us, which needs to respond to God. Everybody who's, even before they become Christians or whatever, there's a spiritual thirst in everybody. They may not know what it is, but it only finds its fulfillment in Jesus and causes us to ask questions or search or, be drawn towards God. People would deny that and say, that's nonsense or that doesn't happen to me. But they may have convinced themselves that they don't need God. But every created being has a spirit which needs to be revived or saved, a soul which needs to be saved. So we are creatures. We are created. My impression of the sons of God in Genesis 6 is that they are some sort of angel or something like that. And it kind of fits in with the Greek mythology, where the gods came down and had children with beautiful women or whatever it was, and these became heroes in Greek mythology because they were half god and half human. It kind of fits in a bit to that scenario.
Yeah, I think those are angels myself also in Genesis 6.
And Chuck Missler makes a very interesting comment that in actual fact, this was Satan messing up the human genome. Now, obviously, they didn't speak of genome in Genesis because it's a new concept to us. but and similarly, when you get Noah being righteous, his genome hadn't been, and his children's genome hadn't been corrupted by Satan meddling with the genetic purity, or no, it wasn't pure because they'd fallen, the genetic makeup that God had placed in human beings. And that's interesting. And if that's true, it has implications for some of our modern technology.
Yeah.
Well,
sorry, Mickey.
You mean like the genetics, the things they're doing with genetics now? Is that what you mean?
I would take it as applying particularly to human genetics, not necessarily other created things.
Oh.
So Alan, we got onto this verse 6. Who were these sons of God who presented themselves before the Lord?
Oh yeah, I've got that down as angels here.
Okay.
Yeah.
You've got to rescue us from our rabbit trail, Alan.
That's okay. That's all right. We're allowed that. And these are questions and speculations and so on, which we may not find the answer to, but we shouldn't be scared of raising the question. They may be somewhat academic, but no, I think that it's quite valid to explore them. Yeah, I think that verse 6 does, to my mind, does imply that there was good angels here and there was bad angels, including Satan. And God addresses him. And it says, what have you been up to? Where have you come from? And he just answers and said he's been roaming around throughout the earth, going back and forth on it, presumably trying to cause as much trouble as he can, which seems to be what he does.
Alan, going back to that, got Lord saying to Satan, "Where have you come from?" It's very similar to the question God asked Adam after the fall.
Yeah.
Where are you? Now, obviously, God knew what Satan had been doing and exactly where he was and what he was doing, but you wonder whether this is a tug at Satan. Hey, where have you come from? What are you doing? And almost, I'm not sure that Satan, I don't think Satan can repent, but it's a sort of a reminder to Satan that he's a sinful being now.
Yeah. He's certainly subordinate. There's no question about that. And he answers to God. When God asks him a question, he has to answer it. Is you can't just ignore him, or you can try telling lies, but God knows anyway. But you're right. That was one of the things I was kind of thinking of. Why did God ask him the question, where have you come from, when he knew perfectly well? But I think that's, in a sense, that's just a bit nitpicking. It's just the style of what's of the book that we're of Job, and it leads into the story. And it also asks him another question, which is in verse 8. Have you considered my servant Job? That's for our benefit, rather than Satan's or God's benefit. The other thing is, we don't know how long this conversation took. It could be instantaneous, happening a lot faster than we can even read it. So I think this is just a style thing. And he also reminds Satan that there isn't anyone like him on earth. Blameless, upright, a man who fears God and shuns evil. Just notice something in verse 8, which we might want to look at. Then the Lord said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job? And then he describes Job to him, a man who fears God and shuns evil. He didn't say a man who fears the Lord and shuns evil. But he does say in the beginning of it, the Lord said to Satan. So there's a hint here that although Job is sincere beyond anything we could imagine in his respect and fear of God, he doesn't yet know the Lord. He knows that he's the Almighty, and he fears God. But this is the Lord saying to Satan. This is Yahweh saying to Satan. But perhaps Job doesn't know him by that name just yet. Does that make any sense at all to anybody?
Yep, okay.
Thanks, Rob. No, I'm just saying that Job is as perfect as he can be, but there's more, is kind of what I'm implying. There's always more in the Lord, of course, but he fears God, but perhaps he doesn't have the intimate relationship which he will have at the end of the book.
This book is supposed to be before Moses, right? This book of Job.
This is supposed to be the oldest book of the Bible.
So then, yeah, he didn't know, or Moses is the one that was given the name of Yahweh.
Yeah. And also, from what we gather later on, it might appear that God hasn't revealed himself to Job yet. Job knows he's there. Job knows that there is an almighty God out there, and that's who he worships. But God hasn't kind of like he appeared in the burning bush, like he did to Moses, yet. And he does near the end of the book, because Job says, "Let me speak to God face to face. I'll ask him questions later on." So he knows there is a holy God out there, and he's doing everything in his power to reach out to him. But I just wonder if he knows that this is the great I am, or whether he just thinks this is a mighty God, the mightiest God of gods.
You get the impression that Job had a heart love of God, and that he was devoted to God in the good sense of devotion.
Yeah.
I wonder whether or not there's a sense in which God's speaking this more to Satan, for Satan, and he's exposing to Satan. Satan can only imagine somebody wanting to have a formal manipulative relationship with God. I'll do this and this, God, and that'll make you do this and this for me. Whereas Job was responding to God out of a heart of devotion. God, I'm responding because I love you, which should be our response. And the trouble is that we so easily default to trying to manipulate God, and which we can't do. And God's revealing to Satan, hey, you've got me wrong, Satan. You've had me wrong from the time you fell onwards.
Yeah. That's a good point, Ralph. After all, why does I'm kind of speaking from Satan's point of view, if I can. What good does it do to shun evil? What difference does it make to God to not be evil? Satan doesn't care about being evil. In fact, he uses it as a weapon all the time.
It says in Revelation, the devil is he accuses the brothers and sisters day and night before God. And so let's see, if you believe in the rapture, we're going to be there for 7 years, and only halfway through is the devil will still be there in heaven until halfway. Revelation 12 is when he's forced out of heaven. So that means he'll be there with whoever's in the rapture. But he's accusing the brothers day and night, and we'll be celebrating up there. So I wonder if he'll be down below us in the room with a broomstick banging on the floor, laying it on the ceiling, telling us to keep it down, keep it down up there. What's all that partying happening up there?
Mickey, that is
that's gorgeous.
I'm not going to be able to unthink that one. I must say. That is amazing. Yeah, you could well be right. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, that one of the main things you just said, of course, is that Satan is the accuser of the brethren and never gives up accusing. Boy, it gets wearisome at times when we recognize it. Sometimes we don't recognize it and we get really down on ourselves. But when we recognize it, we go, oh no, not again. Could he not just shut up? Yeah. But yeah, that's an interesting take, Mickey. Wow. Okay. I think actually we probably should stop on that. We'll just live with that for the rest of the week. That's gonna keep me occupied for the rest of the week.
Ponder that.
Yeah. Okay. Any other comments before we close? Linda.
No one can top that, huh?
No. Yeah. That's good.